Hey guys, welcome to our weekly podcast. This is the AUXposition. I'm Phaetox, head of coaching here at Dwy Gaming and captain of Team Auxiliary, and I'm with.
I'm Epicadin. I'm a diamond jungler for Team Auxiliary, and today we will be talking about the jungle. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump right in and start talking about the meta junglers right now. So at the top of the meta junglers right now, we have pretty much the main four, and we're going to talk about primarily them four, and we'll do a couple honorable mentions. But the main four we have right now are Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, Eve, and Elise.
Yeah, and Lee Sin and Kha'Zix are almost in their own little mini tier according to recent pick and ban trends, at least in competitive play. You know, competitive solo queue, very different situations, especially for junglers, but in competitive play, I believe in OGN, since for the round of 8, semis and quarters, and then into the finals, Lee Sin was picked 15 out of 16 games. That's pretty impressive. And Kha'Zix was picked for 7 and banned for 7, so that's 14 out of 16. And then the other two junglers who we consider top 4 were only in like 2 to 3 games each.
Eve got 6 picks, but Elise only got 1. But also, as well as EU, like EU, I think the statistics flew past the screen, I think yesterday, with Lee Sin being picked in 19 out of the 20 games so far. Not necessarily having the best win rate of all of these top tier junglers, but he's definitely up there.
Yeah, and win rates, like on those little LCS stats in competitive play, there's that win bias to where, you know, if a champion's really, really strong, they're going to get picked up, and they're going to get picked in every game, and it just depends on whether they're on the stronger team or the weaker team. Like, generally, a team that's going to win is going to win regardless of who they get. So, you know, sometimes good champions can have really bad win rates in competitive scenes like that, but
yeah,
those LCS stats really, really good to keep track of meta.
And it's really important to note that the different regions, they all primarily pick these same junglers, but there's some of them are a lot more in higher contestation in different regions. Like Elise, really big in NA, a little bit bigger in EU than in Korea, but in Korea, really not that much of a priority pick. In Eve, like Eve's she's still there, but she's kind of a little underneath Kha'Zix and Lee Sin, but Lee Sin definitely picked in pretty much every game. I think he got like 1 ban in EU LCS, but he's picked in pretty much every game. Though Kha'Zix, like we said, he gets the bans a lot more than Lee Sin, but in those games, you know, he gets played.
Yeah. And like in OGN, like we said, Lee Sin got picked 15 times, but he didn't get a single ban. So it's kind of like, you know, there's different weights on how much they care about certain situations, and depending on who plays what more, if both junglers are comfortable playing it and playing against it, then they're not going to throw a ban at it. And Lee Sin's one of those junglers that, if you're a professional jungle, you need to have him in your pocket right now. If you don't, then you're just not on the scene.
Yeah, you're not quite up there with the rest of the people in the meta curve. But we're going to go over some reasons on why these 4 champions are seeing a lot of play in ranged 5s, and they're still strong in solo queue. Like, all 4 of them are really strong in solo queue. But for the most part, we see Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, Eve, and Elise. There's this one, like, if you were to give like a one phrase to define the jungler role, we pretty much could unanimously agree that the jungler's role is to make an impact in the game in the first 10 minutes. Would you agree, Phaetox?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, pressure and playmaking for sure.
And then the champion has to be able to provide your team. Your champion has to be able to be worth the slot past 10 minutes. So, like, we were actually having this discussion earlier today about something like Volibear, who falls off really hard late game, but he's really strong early game, as far as ganking goes.
Right, and he can work great in solo queue, but in competitive play, we don't see him picked very often because competitive teams know how to stall and drag a game out to where they can catch back up and surpass him.
Right, but champions like Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, Eve, and Elise, Kha'Zix, Eve, and Elise, they pretty much they scale well into the late game for performing their roles.
Percentage health damage, OP.
And Lee Sin changes throughout the course of the game. He goes from that bruiser, fighter, assassin, 1v1, 2v2 skirmisher
So
to
like the pick, initiate,
utility,
make the insect plays.
right. So he's kind of what's the unique in the aspect that he kind of changes his role as the game progresses versus the other three pretty much providing the same thing throughout the course of the game. And that pick, the initiate,
Cash potential, stuff like
right.
that. But all these four junglers, they do generally have a lot of things in common. Like they're all highly mobile. They all have some form of CC. They have good clear speed, and they have good early ganks.
And objective control.
These are common traits. And great objective control. Most of them are really good in skirmishes and team fights.
Yeah, I think
they contribute a lot.
One of the other big thing to key in on these particular set of champions is that they're extremely good at 1v1s and 2v2s. So invading the jungler, ganking a solo lane, getting counter ganked, these champions excel in these areas, and it's really important. So if you were to have this grading scale for these champions, these four champions would score above and beyond the other champions because of these different stats that they have, based on their ability to skirmish, their ability to gank, their ability to invade, their ability to clear, objective control, late game. To be a good jungler, you have to have all of these, and that's why these four champions excel in the meta right now.
Yeah, and so if you guys are just tuning in, those four again are Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, Elise, and Eve. That's what we're gonna go ahead and hashtag God tier. We're gonna call that.
But some other honorable mentions before we move on is Nocturne's still getting some play in OGN. I don't think any EU or NA are probably going to be playing him after the Feral Flare nerfs, but in solo queue he's still really strong, as well as Jarvan, Vi, and Pantheon, all providing pretty much a lot of the same things that your god tier junglers, as we called them, provide, but just not quite as much in an arranged 5 scenario.
Yeah, so there's a bigger margin of error and more room for success for various champions in solo queue. So, just because we're saying that these champs are god tier and pre-mades and stuff like that, don't be deterred from, playing your favorite jungle champion there in the grind.
Right, anything can work. If you've put the hard work and time into it, you can make it work. So with that said, we're going to move on to runes and masteries. We're going to spend a little bit of time on masteries, not too much, and just go over... for the most part,
runes primarily.
Yeah,
for the top 4 that we talked about.
Right. For the most part, most of your junglers are going to be running 2190 or 2109. Probably more primarily 2190. I just wanted to emphasize on the fact that yes, most of your solo queue, your top tier solo queue junglers and competitive junglers are running 21 in offense, and it's important that you're adapted well to that, for the simple fact that it's really important for you to have the 21 points in offense so that you can apply that early pressure in the first 10 minutes, because your ability to 1v1 and 2v2 is probably like with the ganks and skirmishes and stuff like that, it's probably one of the most important things that you can bring as a jungler, and that's a lot of the reason why they bring 21 in offense.
Right, and I think both mastery trees are really good. It's just a matter of when they give you their power. The offensive masteries have a lot of they have flat ID, they have attack speed, they have a lot of upfront power, whereas the defensive masteries all give you percentage increases, percentage damage reduction, stuff like that. It's points that are really good and gold efficient, but they scale better going into the late game than they do early. And on your top tier meta junglers, you're building defensively. You might start a little offensively with Elder Lizard and Hexdrinker, stuff like that, but generally you have that offense from your mastery and your early items, and then you get really tanky with itemization as you snowball.
Right, so like I said, we're not going to spend too much points on mastery. You can get one myself or Phaetox if you want to learn more about how to set up masteries, because they're a really unique way to set up how you want to play your champion. So from champion to champion, they're going to change, not too drastically, but it's going to change so that you can get every point for your, bang for your buck. So moving on from masteries onto runes, there's a set of runes that you're going to want to have for these 4 junglers, and a lot of these runes will work for pretty much any jungler that you want to run, and it's actually not that extensive of a list, to be honest.
Yeah, so if you're looking to main the jungle, you don't have to buy too many runes, so we just want to give you guys the rundown of like, hey, all you people who are maining jungle and want to know more about it, or if you don't play jungle a lot and, you know, but in case you have to play it in solo queue, you want to have a couple of rune pages set aside for, that's what we're going to go over for you right now.
Alright, so for marks, you're pretty much going to want two sets of, or you're only going to need two different marks. You're going to need the attack speed marks and the AD marks. All of your meta junglers are going to run one of these two marks. Your Eve is going to run attack damage marks, your Elise is going to run attack speed marks, and then obviously Kha'Zix and Lee Sin are both going to run AD marks as well. It's really, like, these two sets of marks are pretty much going to set up a good baseline for all of your junglers that are, you know, viable, or meta and viable, or competitive viable. There you go.
Competitively viable. There you go.
Yes. Thank you.
So, and a lot of people are actually taken a little aback by the Elise with the attack speed marks, because everyone, when she first came out, everyone used to run Magic Pen or Hybrid Pen, but now people have been more concerned about clear speed so that she can get those early levels and transfer that power to her ganking, so people have switched over to those attack speed marks.
Indeed. So moving on from marks, just once again, it's attack speed and attack damage. Those are going to be the two sets of marks that you need for pretty much all of your junglers. Alright? Alright, moving on to seals. Seals are kind of like a free slot for the most part. A lot of junglers have been messing around with a lot of different things. Armor is still really good. Most people already have armor because it was pretty much the only yellow that you ran, you know, 2 months ago. But armor's still really good. A lot of junglers have been trying to trade out some different things like health per level, flat health, attack speed, stuff like that. Yellows really is kind of your choice. If you don't know, just go with armor.
Yeah, because everyone used to always run armor on every champ of the game, so everyone already owns those. So, you know, if you're not looking to spare some IP for some jungle rune pages, you can always use those armors yellows that you already have.
So like seals are really easy, so just to reiterate before we move on, it's like flat armor yellow, scaling armor, health per level, and attack speed. Like those are going to be the primary runes that you'll switch between if you have access to them. But if you, like I said, if you don't or you don't know, it's always safe to just go back and revert to armor. And
yeah, and the only armor per level yellows, I think the only one we saw really running that a lot was Elise, just because your spiderlings tank the aggro for you in the jungle, so you don't need the flat early game statistics for it.
Right. So moving on from seals into glyphs. Now glyphs are really interesting because they actually have the most versatility of all of the ones between how most people are playing these junglers. So with glyphs, we actually have flat MR, scaling MR per level, flat AP, and cooldown reduction, and attack speed. So, like, between these sets of runes, attack speed's a lot more niche, and I probably, honestly, would only run it on one jungler, and that's Master Yi. But for everything else, like, I would either run either MR, or flat MR, or scaling MR, and AP and CDR. Like, I would run a combination of one of those to get the stats to what you like when you're jungling, but you should definitely use those sets of glyphs.
Yeah, and most junglers will do 6 CDR glyphs to get that 5% in combination with your 5% from your masteries. That gives you 10% from runes and masteries for CDR, and that's really good. A couple of junglers will go ahead and throw those extra 3 on there just to get the 7.5% instead of the 5%, but most people will just do the 5%, and then you can get like 4 flat MR or 9 MR at level 18 with the other 3.
Right, and see, the good thing about getting that 10% cooldown reduction from runes and mastery is most junglers go with a spirit stone item, which then gives you another 10% item, just showing you how much, you know, cooldown reduction really helps out a lot of these junglers in this meta. You know, Elise gets more cocoons, you know, Lee Sin gets more ulti. Like, most of it's just to get your ulti off cooldown, because the quicker you can bring your ulti off cooldown as these junglers, like, because most of these junglers have really high impact ultis. At least, honestly, it's just for the extra cocoons. Like, the faster you can cocoon, the better, because the more opportunities you have for picking.
Yeah, so just to do a quick rundown, for Kha'Zix, you would basically have 15 flat AD, and then you'd have your 5%, you'd have your CDR blues and your armor or health per level yellows, whichever you prefer. For Eve, you would have the AD marks, AP, glyphs, and quints, and then you'd have those health per level or armor yellows.
We haven't talked about quints yet.
Oh, we haven't talked about quints?
No, you jumped the gun.
Okay, I did jump ahead. You guys go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
So moving from glyphs, we're going to quintessences, alright? As far as quintessences go, there's actually only 3 quintessence that most of these junglers are going to be using. And that's going to be flat AP, flat AD, and attack speed. And any 3 sets of these is pretty much going to be used on all of your dominant junglers. Like a few months ago, we actually saw a lot of movement speed quintessences, but a lot of junglers, competitive junglers, high elo players have all toned it down a notch and brought it to, or not toned it down, they switched it with the flat combat stats so that they're able to, that skirmish potential is a lot stronger with them.
Well, also with the Season 4 Mastery rework, it's really easy to get those the movement speed from those early points in utility, so people have seen, you know, a little bit of decrease in power, the movement speed of runes. Maybe not as necessary there if you got those points in utility.
Right. So, like he was getting into, your Kha'Zix is going to be running 15 flat AD, armor yellows, and then cooldown reduction blues, or MR blues if you want to be a little bit more tanky. Elise is going to be running attack speed reds, armor yellows, AP, flat AP blues, and quintessences for 26 AP. Eve is going to run a very similar page. She's going to run the 26 AP, but instead of the attack speed marks, she's going to be running flat AD marks. She's hybrid scale, or she has hybrid damage scaling, so it's really good for her to get those extra numbers into her abilities early lane for faster clears and a lot more early impact when she roams and ganks. And then for Lee Sin, Phaetox.
Yeah, for Lee Sin, it's a little more flexible. People have been running either a mix of attack damage and attack speed, or, you know, some junglers prefer all one way or all the other. I've seen junglers run full attack speed, I've seen junglers run full AD, but generally, the best mix I personally have found, in my opinion, is you have 11 AD and 9 attack speed, and you get that with AD marks, with your reds, and then you have 1 AD quint, and then 2 attack speed quints.
And so there you have it for runes and masteries for your meta junglers, and honestly, the runes that we gave you are runes that you should be able to use pretty much on any jungler that you want to go ahead and bring in to jungle. Like, they'll be a good baseline for you.
Yeah,
so,
pretty much any of like the bruiser tanky junglers, if you don't know what to run on your jungler, attack speed improves the clear speed of every jungler in the game, so you can always fall back to those runes.
Right. So moving on from there, we just want to briefly touch on when to pick what type of jungler. Just make sure when you're in Champion Select and you're in solo queue or you're with your team that you pay attention to the team dynamic that your team is going for, and you pick a jungler that supplements that. It's really important that you understand the strengths of each of these junglers and when to play them with what comp you have, especially in solo queue, because you'll find it significantly easier to acquire elo or LP if you can use your jungle to better synergize with your team. So just wanted to note on that before we move into the game. So when you first load into the game, after you've already selected your runes, your masteries, you got the jungle that you're using. Before you even load into the game, you're in the loading screen. You need to determine a few things. You need to set up a game plan for how you're going to start this game. And the game plan that you choose, it's really important that you take note of their jungler, you know, their solo lanes, their bot lane, you know. Basically, you need to know, like, can you invade? Well, do they have strong laners? Do they have a strong jungler? Like, for instance, the other day I was playing a jungle Rengar, and I was jungling against an Udyr. No, I spent 0 time in his jungle, and I actually honestly gave up a lot of my jungle to him just because I knew that if he found me in the jungle, it wasn't worth him getting the kill on me. So
you gotta recognize your strengths and weaknesses, like when to pick your fights, when you need to scale up, you know, like Rengar, really strong after 6. Pre-6, not so much. Udyr, he doesn't even have an ult, so his power spike doesn't come at 6. It comes at like level 2. So you want to stay away from him.
And just like I said, just know like okay, so if they have a Renekton top, like Renekton's really strong early game, he's an early game bully, and it's really important for him to get that lead early. So maybe that's a lane that you might want to pay a little extra close attention to early game, so that you can kind of give your top laner a little help, while Renekton's probably going to be playing a little bit more aggressive. So just take note of the champions on each side and how that's going to work into what you're able to do when you're pathing.
Yeah, I think we should, before we wrap it up here, talk a little bit more about, when to pick who. Because the top 4 junglers, like, you can pick any of your pocket picks for solo queue, because as long as we talk about the top 4, you'll kind of understand where we're going with it, and you can apply that logic to what your champion pool is for the jungle. But, so, the top 4 meta junglers all have slightly similar kits, but they all excel in different areas. Like, Lee Sin is an amazing early pressure jungler, and I mean most of the top 4 junglers can gank really well early as well. But so like you have Eve, and Eve scales pretty hard. She's great in team fights because of that low cooldown Q, lots of AoE damage. So you want her in like a team fight comp. Whereas someone like Elise and Lee Sin would be better in like a poke or siege comp because they have good disengage. Elise has ranged auto attacks, so she can help hit towers with her team better, stuff like that.
Right. With that said, we're wrapping up. We don't have much time before draft night's actually about to get started. So if any of you viewers have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them. I know we didn't actually get too much into actually jungling inside the game, but just remember there's a lot of knowledge and information and a set game plan that you need to set up before you actually ever load into the game. And the more that you understand and can do before you load into the game, that much more better. That much more better.
More better. More better. More better.
That you being able to execute that game plan is going to be. You know what they say, a plan for a failure to plan is a plan for failure, so.
And we'll get a lot more information pumped out to you guys in the community via videos and stuff outside of our weekly podcast. Next week we do have scheduled guest appearances from a couple people, so we can't just delay the in-game strategy for next week, but we'll loop back around to it eventually, because we're going to be doing these podcasts every week. So we have a lot of planned content, and then we'll loop back around and get into more detailed in-game jungling structure for you guys in a couple weeks, hopefully.
But in the meantime, if I know we probably didn't get to all of the questions that everyone had for this segment, because I know there was a lot of people who wanted the jungle segment. So if you have any other questions, you can reach out to myself or Phaetox, whenever, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions with
Yeah, we both do coaching here in Dwight, so if you want one-on-one coaching sessions for, jungle, either of us are pretty good to help you with that. I also just did like an hour-long jungle commentary for one of my solo queue games. I published that video on the Facebook, so there's some good tips and tricks in that could help you guys as well. We're gonna do more videos with jungle commentary like that in the future. So like I said, we'll hopefully get a lot more content pumping out to you guys, maybe do some jungle MOBA fire guides, something like that. If you want specific detailed information or have questions, feel free to seek us out in the raid call, on the forums, on the Facebook group. Any of those are good ways of contacting us.
Alright, and with that said, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up and say it was great. We had a good time, as always. And
make sure to tune in next week, because we will be talking about bot lane with
2 of my friends that I've been playing League with for a while. We all started out in silver together, and unfortunately they spent a little bit, well, not unfortunately, unfortunate for me, they spent a little bit more time. Yeah, they spent a little bit more time in solo queue and fives, and they actually are, I think, 3rd or 4th on the challenger ladder in arranged fives. It's the bot lane for Memphis, I think is their name.
Vexatious.
Vexatious. Yeah, it's Latin. But it's a challenger bot lane, and they'll be able to give us some insight into playing bot lane when we talk about it. So with that said, we're gonna get you guys into draft night, and hope you guys have a good time.
Thanks for tuning in.